everybody keeps asking the same thing. What's the latest update in Lil Durk's case? But the real update isn't just a date on a calendar. It's the fight over what the jury is even allowed to hear. Because that fight can shape the entire trial before opening statements even happen. So let's break this down clearly. What's confirmed, what's alleged, what's being argued in court, and what happens next. And as we go, I'm going to separate headlines from facts because a lot of people are mixing those up right now. The case in plain English: Lil Durk, legally Dirk Banks, is involved in a federal case tied to allegations of a murder for hire conspiracy. The case is connected to a 2022 shooting in Los Angeles. Prosecutors allege the target was rapper Quando Rondo, and that Quando Rondo's cousin, Lil Pab, was killed. That's the allegation, and Lil Durk has pleaded not guilty. And in court, that matters because legally he's presumed innocent unless the government proves their case. Man, here's where the updates actually start. Why people keep seeing different trial dates? If you've been watching the headlines, you've probably seen multiple trial dates floating around: April and May, spring 2026, even early as possible. And that makes people think, wait, what's going on? Here's what's going on. Federal cases move slow when discovery is massive. Discovery is the evidence both sides have to review: records, digital files, phone data, surveillance messages, photos. And when there are multiple defendants, it gets even heavier because timelines don't just depend on one team being ready. They depend on everyone being ready. So when you see trial dates shifting, that's not always something new happened. Sometimes it just means the evidence pile is huge and the court is trying to make sure nobody can claim they were rushed. But here's the key point. The trial date isn't the most important update right now. The most important update is what's happening before the trial, because that's where cases are often won or lost. The custody situation and why it matters. Another major update people keep skipping is custody conditions, because there's been reporting about a dispute involving solitary confinement tied to an alleged incident involving an Apple Watch. Now, even if you don't care about the details of that, the reason it matters is simple. Trial prep is everything. And if the defense argues that custody conditions interfere with preparation, that becomes a court issue. It becomes motions, hearings, arguments, rulings, and the court has to balance two things at once: security and procedure versus fairness and the ability to prepare. So when you hear about hearings connected to custody conditions, that's not random drama. That's the court managing the process while the bigger case moves forward. And speaking of the bigger case, this is where the real fight is happening. The evidence war, what the jury is allowed to hear. Here's the part that could shape everything: the battle over evidence. Because in a case like this, it's not just about what happened, it's about what can be proven. And even more specifically, it's about what can be presented to a jury in a way that holds up legally. That's why pretrial motions matter so much, because the judge can decide what the jury is allowed to hear, what they are not allowed to hear, right? And what kind of story the government is allowed to tell. Now, this case has been wrapped in a broader debate that hits hip hop directly. The question is, should rap lyrics, music videos, and image ever be used as evidence? Because prosecutors sometimes try to use music-related material to suggest intent, to suggest motive, to suggest the real life meaning behind art. And defense teams often argue the opposite, that is art, that is storytelling, that is performance, and that treating it like a confession is dangerous. Here's what people miss. Even if one specific piece of lyrics evidence gets limited, the broader narrative argument can still come in through other doors, social media associations and messages, visuals. So it's not as simple as lyrics are in or lyrics are out. The real update is this: both sides are fighting to control the story the jury hears first. Because first impressions matter in court, and in a high profile case, the first impression can become the entire lens the jury uses. The newest allegations making headlines. Now you've probably also seen newer headlines about alleged details, claims about a bounty number, claims about planning it, claims about who said what. Here's the rule for how you should process those. If it's not in court filings you've read directly, treat it as reported allegations and not fact. Because even in reporting that comes from prosecutors, prosecutors are still arguing their side, and defense is going to challenge it. So when you hear about a specific number being alleged, it matters for one reason. Like, it's simple, it's emotional, and it's easy for the public to repeat. But in court, the question becomes, where does that claim come from? Is it witness testimony? Is it recorded communication? Is it corroborated by something independent? Because without that, a strong sounding claim can collapse under cross examination. And that's why this keeps circling back to discovery volume and pretrial battles. What happens next? The checklist that actually matters. If you want the real update moving forward, watch these three things. Up first, any hearings connected to custody conditions, and those can affect trial prep and schedule. Second, the trial schedule locking in. Because until the court officially locks it, dates will keep shifting based on readiness and court availability. Third, and most important, evidence rulings. Anything involving what can be referenced in front of the jury is massive, because that decides whether the trial is going to be clean and narrow or narrative heavy and emotional. And the difference between those two is everything. Why this case is bigger than Lil Durk. Even if you're not a fan, even if you don't listen to rap, this case matters culturally for a reason. Because every time art gets treated like intent, it creates a chilling effect. Artists start thinking, if I rap it, can it be used against me? And that's why the lyrics as evidence debate keeps coming back. Not just here, but across multiple cases, across multiple states, across multiple years. So when you see people arguing online, they're not just arguing about one rapper, they're arguing about whether a genre can exist without being treated like a legal liability. Clean recap. So here's the clean recap. The Lil Durk case update isn't one headline, it's three moving parts. One, the timeline is shifting because the case is complex and discovery is heavy. Two, there are custody related disputes being addressed through hearings, and those affect preparation. Three, and the biggest fight is evidence of what can be presented, what can't, and how the story is framed for a jury. That's what you should be watching, because that's what decides the trial long before the trial begins. Close with engagement hook. Now, I want to ask you one question. Should rap lyrics or music videos ever be allowed as evidence in court, or should that be completely off limits? Unless it's directly tied to a specific crime. Drop your answer in the comments, and if you want, I'll keep doing clean updates. Every time a court filing or ruling changes the direction of the case, because the next real update won't be a headline, it'll be a ruling. and that ruling will tell us what kind of trial this is about to be.